Now, for this question, although you have the outline, I want you to take out a piece of paper and follow through with me how I plan the answer. The question will always look very inviting, very easy. Alright, as you read it, you will think like, what is so difficult? Okay, they merely tell you open economy. So open economy tells you IS, LM, BP. So they won't even tell you Mundell-Fleming. They just say open economy. Any government budget deficit must be matched by a current account deficit of the same size. They must be exactly the same. So when students saw this question, they thought, hey, this doesn't look difficult. Alright, just prove there is an equation. Government's deficit equals current account deficit. Okay, so let's run through the steps. So step 1, first you must know, alright, you are at equilibrium income in the goods market. Supply equals to spending. So you write out your C plus I plus G, okay, plus your NX. Then you group your C and G to the left. You left with I plus NX. So you cannot straight away write S is I plus NX because that is not a model. The model is the Keynesian cross model, right? Supply of goods must be the spending on goods. Rearranging it, then you get S minus, should I say Y minus C minus G is I plus NX. And the term here is therefore total savings is I plus NX. Then you split total into private and public. Now, you don't earn marks from this equation at all. Alright? And you have not answered the question yet. Although you can see government spending affecting public savings and NX appearing. But writing these few lines don't earn marks. Okay? So therefore, you try to answer the question. You want to say, if this is negative, and they must be the same size. Okay, so step 2, you use the equation. If you want change in S public to be exactly the same as change in NX, this implies change in S private is 0. Okay, that means to say S private is Y minus C minus T, right, plus TR. So you want all of them to be unchanged. Specifically, income to be unchanged. Alright, okay? So you must highlight because in your ISLM diagram, the axis that will possibly affect S private is income. So you must make sure in your diagram, the horizontal axis must show income cannot change. So you start off knowing what you want first. You must tell the examiner, this is what you assume first. That S private must be 0, indicating output change must be 0. Okay, so that's the first assumption. Second assumption is what the examiner wants to test. Change in I must be 0. Right, look at the equation. So you go in and tackle each term. Right? How can change with I be 0? You write down the investment function, I bar minus B2I. So you already assume B1 to be 0. So whenever we do true-false question, right, use a simple investment function. Right? So in this case, you only want to look at the vertical axis interest rate affecting investment. You don't want to complicate I and Y in the investment function. So you hold only B2 positive, B1 0. And therefore, for change in investment to be 0, change in interest rate must be 0. And this will occur during a horizontal BP when F is infinity. By now, you already answered half the question. Imagine you watch your time. For some reason, it was already 10-15 minutes. Okay, you have to give up. But you will not get a 0 because you already met half of the objective of the examiner. You demonstrated, you understood the King's model, you demonstrated skills, that you know how to make assumption. Okay, right, then we move on from there. Let's talk about government's deficit. It means G versus the T. Okay, so again, not to complicate matter, assume T is T bar. You don't want to do T1Y. In case IS or LM affected income, there was T1Y. Alright, okay, and therefore in this case, you are discussing G increase, therefore it's more than the T bar that you held constant. So therefore, IS will shift to the right. Okay, and you know that S public, right, is T minus G. So your T was lump sum tax, but constant, the G goes up. So you know your S public is negative. So can you see, you are doing a very systematic approach to build up your answer. You look at the standard equation, you look at every function. Right? So in this case, you want to highlight. You're going to shift the IS to the right. Okay? And at final equilibrium, you want an instance that income change is 0, interest rate change must be 0. Then can you have change in S public equals to change in NX? So this is a question you cannot hurry through. That's why it takes 20 minutes. By planning itself, it took 5 minutes because you have to be clear. Okay, so in this case, at step 3, you have to do a little bit of trial and error. So please draw this in so that you can follow through with me. Okay, but up to this juncture, you already won half the battle because you displayed, understood the question, and the need to make assumptions. So you are at point A, or E1 if you want to call that. Alright, so we are still on the same question. There is government budget deficit, G increase, T bar constant. So the IS shifted right. You landed in point B. But you know you're doing open economy, so you cannot just say point B. You have to analyze the BP. In this case, I will skip the steps. You should get a surplus. Okay, and the currency strengthened. And you know, this is what the Mundell-Fleming is all about, right? Every time when the currency strengthens, you've got to ask yourself, fixed or flexible exchange rate. Then you ask yourself, what is your final answer? You wanted an answer that change in income to be 0, so that S private change can be 0. You also wanted an answer that interest rate cannot change, because you want change in investment to be 0. So you are at point B. The only way that income and interest rate goes back to I1Y1, okay, so this is due to G increase. So for you to go back to point A, the only way is IS drop, and this must due to flexible exchange rate. Alright, which in this case, the NX is negative. So at this juncture, you answered the question that you have to pick a suitable exchange rate. This makes it very tricky. That's why when you reach point B, analyzing the BP and exchange rate, you cannot happily say, oh, under fixed exchange rate is this, under flexible exchange rate. The examiner will know you are not ready for this question. Can you imagine? We have not answered. We still have not answered the question. Alright, so in this case, you can see I merely analyze the size of NX being negative, or should I say the size of government's budget being negative. I have analyzed income and interest rate don't change. I have not analyzed NX yet. Okay, so after you finish the diagram, okay, so therefore, right, you discuss G increase, shift IS, okay.